Okay, so let's take a look at this tutorial, which covers the last unit of this course, which normally I would teach with a presentation and some examples, and then you do programming problems. But because of the pandemic and because of the time we have left, I've compacted it all into a tutorial. So by doing this one tutorial, you'll get all the marks you would normally get in the unit. Okay, let's take a look at it. It's on our website right now. So if you scroll down to remote learning assignments, here is the instruction document that will describe the tutorial for you. And if you aren't following this video and you'd rather work on your own, I've already made a video that covers how to go through the entire tutorial from start to finish. Okay, so I'm going to start by opening this instructional document here. And I won't just keep this open the whole time, but here you can see how it describes that it will take 1 hour or less. That's how I designed it. It might take longer for some of you, but you can follow this document or watch a video. So let me just show you right here. If you were to follow the video, and the sound won't be on in this video, but you can see here, I've set the video. It actually took 41 minutes for me to get through this tutorial. From the start where I'm going through, I was wearing the same Jets jersey that day. And then I go through how to do it step by step. And some of the coding in this will be copied and pasted. You don't have to type it all in. All the way down to the end of this tutorial where, just to show you kind of what the end product looks like, let me just get down towards the end here. It's going to be this little car racing game where you race and try to get past other cars, and if you collide with them, it's game over. But you actually get to choose which vehicle you're gonna, right? So you can choose to pick a motorcycle or a car or a truck. The motorcycle's skinnier and a little bit faster maneuvering, but it can't take any damage. So if it touches one of the other vehicles, it's game over with one hit. And the goal is to try and pass as many cars as possible. Okay, with the car, if you pick the car and you get to type in your name, if it's the car or the truck is bigger and slower, but it can take up to 3 hits. And the car can take 1 hit, and it's sort of in between the motorcycle and the truck. So it's kind of what I wanted to get out of this tutorial was a little bit of experience with the concept of classes, which is the concept that I wanted the tutorial to cover, but also to cover as well the idea of graphics, because all your programming this year has been in little dialog boxes and system.out. And yes, you can do graphics and you can do graphical designs. For those of you who took the grade 10 computer science course, you may be like, well, how come I can't do that stuff? You can do that stuff, and in this tutorial I show you. Normally that's done in an entire unit, but again, because of time, I'm compacting it down. And this also is kind of a sample version of what could be a final project. And again, we're not doing that either, okay? And we'll talk about that next week. All right, so as it says right here, this is in lieu of that last unit and any programming extras that normally is the course, and it's sort of a little bit of a final project experience. You can complete this in one sitting or across several sessions, which is what we're going to do. Okay, so here you can see under marking it says the entire tutorial does not need to get completed to get some marks. If you partially complete this tutorial, you're going to get partial marks, right? So it depends what you want on this unit. Do you want 100 marks on this unit, 100%? Or do you just want some partial marks, right? Okay, so let's start a project. I'm going to call this the Computer Science 30S tutorial. Okay, so this is my Computer Science 30S tutorial that I'm going to work on this on, okay? And as you can see in this document, it tells you what to do right here. That basically, inside a main, you're just going to create one line of code right here, just one line, okay? So we'll get to that in a second. Let me just let the project finish. There it is. Here's my project. It's ready to go. sort of ready. And if I was to look over here, this is what the project looks like right now. 30S tutorial with this one file. Now, what you're going to see in my documents is a number of comments, like this comment here, trying to explain what we're going to be doing step by step, okay? So it says that you're going to type in this line of code, but it will generate an error at first. What we'll be doing is creating something called a class and creating what's called an object. One class written in code can be used to create multiple objects. An analogy could be like we're creating a cookie cutter and then using that cookie cutter to make multiple cookies. So these words class and object are going to be used throughout the tutorial, and that's again in lieu of studying classes in the formal way. Okay, now before I go and read any more of this, I will also like to point out that on our class website, it says if you have trouble reading, which I was already having trouble, there's a folder of all the code here. So you can actually click that link and open up PDFs of all the code, including this tutorial file I'm working on right now. So I can double click that, make that bigger, and it's a little easier to read now that. Or reading this little section down here that says, we're going to be adding another Java class to a project. Up to this point in your programming, all of our projects have just been one file, one class. But now we're going to do this. We're going to add another one. And so it explains how to do that in this comment right here. Okay. Now, as well, this is a place where you can actually select the code right off my website. Notice I'm right on my website. I can copy it, take it over to my NetBeans project, and I can actually paste it right in there as well. Okay, so that is an option. Now, once I paste it in, I might have to clean it up a little bit. It may not paste in perfectly, right? But it's a lot easier, I think, than actually typing all that code. So this is something to keep in mind, that this isn't a typing exercise for you guys. This is a learning exercise for you guys. So I'd rather you copied and pasted code and read the comments than not do that at all, because it's not about the typing of the code, it's about learning what it does. So now if I jump back there and I go to this one line, vehicle select screen equals new vehicle select, to create a new vehicle select screen, I could actually even copy that and paste it right into main. And if I was reading the comment, it would have told me that it was going to generate an error, which is okay. It's okay right now for that error to happen. Okay, so whether you're reading it off just the code, whether you're reading it off of this document that sort of goes through it step by step, okay, or whether you're following along on the video where I'm doing it here or this video, it should help you to get this tutorial done. Okay, so let's move to the next step. So now it says what we're going to do is we're going to add a Java class to our project by going in NetBeans to File, New File. So let's start with that. File, New File. So see how I did that right there? Okay, that is also shown right here in graphics like this. It says you're supposed to select Swing GUI Forms, JFrame Form. Okay, so Swing GUI Forms, JFrame Form. I'm gonna make sure I select the right one. Swing GUI Forms, JFrame Form. Not this one, but the second one. Next. Now, what am I going to call this? Well, what you're going to call it is vehicle select. Now, make sure you use a capital V and a capital S so it matches up with the code we have right here. Vehicle select. Check that. Did I make any typos? Did I use the capital V and the capital S? Looks good. And I'm going to click finish. Now, what's about to happen in NetBeans is something that you haven't seen before. It's going to change the look. We are no longer just looking at code anymore. Okay. Now we're looking at something else. We're looking at a designer. For those of you who took the grade 10 computer science course, this will look familiar to you. You'll have this thing right here, which in the grade 10 course you would call a form. In Java, they call this thing a frame, but they are essentially the same thing. It's a place that you can put something on there. If you haven't seen this before, you could think of this like a window, or maybe even just the app itself, or the program. This is the little thing that it's running in, okay? And then over here, you've got this palette with these things like buttons and labels and stuff like that. And what you can do is you can take something like a button and drag it over here and drop it right on there, okay? Or you can do other things, like you can click on it and then drag it over. There's lots of sort of ways you can use this, as it says here, to use the palette and something called a properties window. So you should also see this thing. If you don't see it, it might be pinned along the side here, called properties. So you want to sort of set that up. You need to change your windows. You could go up here to window, reset windows. If your windows have kind of got all messed up, reset the windows. And then you should be able to see the palette. And then you should be able to click on properties and then click on this little button right here to sort of connect it on there if you want. And so now you have a palette and you have properties. Again, for those of you who took the grade 10 course, this will look very familiar. This will look very familiar to you. And as a matter of fact, why don't I take a second to show you that? I'm going to start up Visual Studio. Now, as that's launching in the background, you can see here now some of the stuff that's happening here and where we're going to go next on this tutorial. The code screen doesn't help with that because that's just code. It's this document that sort of takes you through that process. Or if you were watching on the video, the pre-recorded video, I would be showing the same thing that I was just showing in this video, how you would go and create this vehicle select screen by adding a J-frame and then putting it in there. So all that same stuff is in the video if you want to go through that video as well. Okay, so I was sort of delaying while that was launching. It's still launching, so. Okay, now what you'll also see, now in your project folder, you now have two things. You have this Computer Science 30S, and you have vehicle select.java. Why is this still, did I not spell it the same? I thought I did. Oh, I just had to hit save. So once I hit save, then it now no longer has an error because now it knows what vehicle select is. It's this thing, whatever this thing is. So this thing and this thing are now connected. Okay, here's Visual Studio. I'm just going to create a new project just to remind you guys, for those of you who took the grade 10 course, how this would look in a program like Visual Studio. And for those who didn't take the grade 10 course, this is an interesting sort of example of how Visual Studio works. 6 minutes left in today's tutorial for those following along. I'm not sure how many of you are. It looks like you're all still on the line, so that's great. Oh, Visual Studio is being very sluggish. But again, my goal was to just take 20 minutes to get a start on this tutorial today. And now, as I'm sort of delaying as this is launching, you guys can see that you're not going to have to type all the code. A lot of it will be copied and pasted. Now, when you copy and paste, though, you might have to clean it up. It's not going to necessarily copy and paste perfectly from that page on the internet over to your NetBeans project. It'll paste it, but we'll go through that process together, and I'll show you some of the spots where you'd have to maybe clean it up and fix it up. You're going to get to experience this designer thing here. So as that Visual Studio launches, you'll see kind of how that's going to work as well. How you're going to, and you can see in the tutorial here, how you're going to drag and drop stuff to build this graphical user interface. So for example, you're going to be putting 3 buttons on your design. So like you saw, I'm going to take a button and drag it and drop it. Then I'm going to take another button and drag it and drop it. And another button. I'm going to bring 3 buttons over there. I'm going to maybe resize things to make things bigger. Maybe I'm going to resize my buttons as well and move them around a little bit. so I can get a feel for how this project's going to go. You're going to notice as you move and resize things that these weird sort of springy things start happening. It's trying to help you to line things up a little bit as you do this. This can be helpful and annoying at the same time. But there it is. Now, if you're working in Visual Studio, you would have done essentially the same thing. In Visual Studio, it also has a little toolbox, which I'm trying to bring up right now. It also has a properties window, which I'm also trying to bring up right now, but it's very sluggish. So I'm going to bring over those buttons, and then I'm going to bring over something called a text. It's called a text field in NetBeans, and J button, and these things called labels or J labels. So for example, I'm going to, from this palette, find this thing called a text field, not a text area, not that one, text field. And I'm going to bring it over here and maybe stretch it out. And then I'm going to find this thing called a label, a J label. So I'm going to need label, button, and text field from the area called swing controls. You'll notice there are other labels and buttons and text fields down here. These are fine too, but that's not the ones I use in the tutorial. I'm going to use the ones from up here where it says swing. Okay. Now, again, if you were in the grade 10 course, finally this is working, you would have done the same thing. You would have put a button on, you would have put they call it a text box and a label. Very similar. And then for those of you who did the grade 10 course, once you drew those on your user interface, you would use this thing called a properties window to change things about it. Well, guess what? We're going to do the exact same thing here. We select a button, and then over here in properties, we can, for example, change what text appears on that button. So if I look here, what I want it to say is choose motorcycle. So what I'm going to do is select that button, select text, go here, type in choose motor, hit enter, and then you'll see it changed over here. So what you do is you type it here where it says text, button 1. So you select J button 1, type in the text here, and then hit enter. And if you make a mistake, you do it again. So I go here, select text, select here, choose car, select this one, select text, select here, choose truck. So that's how I change the 3 buttons to have that text in there. So it's a design thing. We're not actually writing any code at all. This is a very visual environment to create these designs, okay? And you can see there's little helpful sort of little guidelines that can also help you to make sure, for example, that they're all, if you really want to get picky about how big they are and how far apart they are. And, you know, there's lots of little things you can do with this stuff, right? If you kind of play around with it a little bit. Okay, so now that you're getting the hang of this a little bit, what about these labels? Well, not only am I going to have one here, but I'm going to have a bunch of these labels. Okay, so let's start with this first one. I'm going to take that label. I'm going to call it, I'm going to put in it name, enter. Okay, so that's ready to go. So let me just position that, position this text box beside it, make it bigger if I need to. For that one, I don't want any text inside of it, so I'm going to select its text and just leave it empty, blank. And now let me build up some of these other things there. So it's going to say red, fastest, small build, cannot take damage. Okay. So let's put some labels on there and build that. We only got a few seconds left for what I want to work on today. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So this one is red. Oops. You can hear my timer ticking down in the background. This one's going to say fastest. it's going to say small build. And finally, it's going to say cannot take damage. Okay, so that's where I'm going to pick up with tomorrow. Is we're going to finish this design that we've started right here. These labels on this design right here. Okay? And we'll put labels here, and then we'll go forward from there in the instructions. So that's my start on how to get started on this tutorial. Okay, I'm going to turn off the recording now.